Good morning, Eden.
Good morning.
Very exciting to get back into this.
Yeah.
I was when I posted the poll asking who's going to join this year, I was a little bit nervous about the response would go. So I'm very grateful to Baruch Hashem. Everybody's very happy to be back. Okay, so let's bring our minds into the sugya. Let's bring ourselves back into the thinking of where we are. So we started with Siman Kufay, right? We started with 105, and as explained, we did that because, well, first of all, I'm following the program of Laman Yimadu, but the reason why they begin with Kufay, with 105, even though we're going to be going back to the page Zion, because the reason we do that is because this siman discusses the halacha of transferring flavor, which stands at the core of understanding taruvas and eating basar b'chalav. As I think we're doing next is we're going to Tzadik Aleph. Walking outside. Aaron. We're going to be going. I was locking me outside. Sorry. We're going to be going to Tzadik Aleph after this, right? That's what the syllabus said, I think. And the principles we're going to be learning there are going to be very much borrowed or what's the word? Interconnected to what we're learning here, right? Which is a question of transfer of power. I should also say that better than describing this as learning halacha, like do, don't, it's much more, as we've discussed in the past, understanding the principles of halacha. And then you have to figure out how to apply it. Because a lot of these things are like hypotheticals that may or may not happen. But each of these hypotheticals teach you a principle about how we understand the limitations of the transfer of flavor. And then you have to apply it to the particular situation. Now, there are a few different elements that we've been discussing when you're considering the transfer of flavor. But let's say we have now, for the purpose of the next couple for this week, let's say two elements that are important to remember. One is there's an agent that must extract flavor from the item, from whatever food item. And then item number two is if that agent, or if there is an agent to make it absorb into the next thing. Right? And they're not necessarily the same. We spoke about this once before, that you can have something that can exfoliate, but not necessarily with the other item absorb that which has been exfoliated by the other thing. Right? So you have to have something that will extract and something that will absorb, that will cause absorption in the next thing. So we went through a bunch of different types of these agents, right? The order was brine, like a kavush was sorry?
Sear.
But sear was a certain kind of kavush, right? But kavush is soaking was pickling, thank you. Pickling, right? That was one. And then the highest form would be cooking, right? Cooking meaning in a pot of liquid, because that pot of hot liquid does both extraction and absorption, causing a complete mixture of all the flavors everywhere. That would be the highest form of transference. And then we discussed others, like grilling, baking, where there's no liquid cooking, basically, and they're cooking next to each other. And then that is where this question became, which one's on top, which one's on bottom, right? Is it fatty? Which one's fatty? Right? Are we like the Ramah, which we are, that we don't know the difference between fatty and liquid and lean, right? Those distinctions, tata gavar, which one's on top, which one's on bottom, is it fatty, is it not fatty, to what degree they're touching, and so on. That will all be relevant when you don't have an agent that does both transfer and absorption. When you have an agent, the cooking pot, that does transfer and absorption, you don't have to have any of these things. Top, bottom makes a difference, all the flavors everywhere. So even when the flavor is not so easily transferred, then the question becomes, if it's hot and it's fatty and it's on bottom, it's certainly going to transfer up because you have all the conditions. It's grilling, hot, it's fatty, and it's on bottom, and definitely the flavor will both extract and make its way upward. But not necessarily the case if it's the reverse. If the non-kosher was on top rather than on bottom, or if they're not fatty, and so on. Right? So the rest of the siman, the rest of this chapter from chapter 9 through 14 is going to be discussing the agent of salting. And to what degree is salting considered an agent that will extract flavor and make absorb? Now, we know, of course, that salt extracts flavor. That's the principle of Moliach, right? Which we're going to be learning, which is why Moliach, one of the reasons why Moliach is part of SEMICHA, even though none of us here, I mean, I don't know, maybe one day you'll go into the business, I don't know. But running a kitchen, you're not ever salting your meat. That used to be the case, but nowadays you buy pre-salted meat. I think I mentioned this once before. My grandmother once expressed to me that she's like annoyed. Some part of her brain is annoyed that we buy ready kosherized chicken and meat. Because she grew up, we bought a live chicken on Wednesday, stuffed it with bread, brought it to the shachat on Thursday, brought it home to kosherize it for Shabbos. And your mother told you, here, take the lung to the Rav because I see a problem. Maybe the Rav will tell you it's kosher or not kosher. So in her mind, there's like a whole part of Judaism that we're not growing up with. Right?
Did it taste better, or was it the
No idea.
That's
I'm sure my grandmother will tell you it definitely tasted better. I don't know. But she was more speaking to the fact that it's a whole part of Judaism that we're not familiar with. Because we buy kosherized chickens. Sorry?
More Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
Do you think that process was less expensive?
I have no idea. I
All-
have no idea. I mean, look, there's a line that goes everywhere because my grandmother wasn't buying cows and bringing it home, right? So she was buying the pre-kosherized cows, yeah, but not the chickens. And we're buying pre-kosherized chicken. And some of us are buying pre-kosherized Pesach food items, right? So the line, where you want to put the line is wherever. That's not the point. The point is that there's a whole section of Yiddishkeit that exists in a factory that doesn't exist in our home. So we're not doing salting. It's not most of us. But nonetheless, we're going to be learning these halachas because it's still part of the principles of extracting flavor. That's the whole point. You salt meat to extract non-kosher blood from the meat that we're going to be eating. So salt is an agent of extraction. But to what degree is it an agent of causing it to absorb into the next thing? And does it have that capacity at all? And to what degree? Is it going to be on top or is it going to be on bottom? Is it going to be touching? Very similar to the grilling discussion. It's that the principles that we're going to be looking at over the next over this week. So it looks like it's a bigger section than previous weeks, but not really, because as we learn more principles, you can move faster, right? So it's going to lay down right at the beginning, it's going to lay down the idea of salting being an agent and to what degree it's an agent, and then it's going to repeat the same things. Is it on bottom? Is it touching? Is it fatty? Right? And it's going to end up repeating a lot of the same stuff we've done already, but this time applying it to the salting rather than to grilling or to kavosh, to pickling, and what type of pickling and so on. Okay. So the source for this discussion is actually the same source of the first section, which was kavosh. The first section was pickling, and there we learned kavosh kumavosha. That pickling is like cooking. If it's pickling for 24 hours, it becomes an agent of both extraction and absorption, right, all the way. Now, the very same statement in the Gemara, which says that kavosh is kumavoshel, that pickling is like cooking, that same statement, which comes from Shmuel, also says Moliach areu karatuach. Moliach karatuach, which means, translate directly, salting is like boiling. Karatuach is like boiling. It's something which is hot, like scalding almost. So the Gemara struggles with the change in language, which means kavosh is kumavoshel. Pickling is like cooking. Salting is not like cooking. It's like scalding. It's like cooking. It's like boiling. What's the difference?
Well, it makes sense.
Sorry.
Because like when you're salting, it opens up the meat completely. So it's just like when it boils it, the water expands the meat.
Right. Exactly. But we're not calling it cooking.
What's the
Yeah.
difference between
Sorry?
boiling and cooking?
So boiling. That's what I'm saying. Boiling really is cooking. But the language is not kumavoshel. It's kiratuach. Kiratuach is that's why it's hard to translate. Boiling is one word. Another word would be scalding. It's like kiratuach is like it's really really hot. That's what kiratuach means, right? It could even be. It could probably be applied to things that aren't cooked in liquid also.
I just thought there was somewhere
Right.
they both
Yes, exactly.
and shrink the meat.
Certainly, it extracts flavor. That's the idea, right? but the Gemara is precise in not calling it kamavushal, which means it's not the same thing as the pickling, which has a full transferring both extraction and absorption. Salt is like scalding or tuach. I'm not how do they translate tuach here? Do they use that word? Dinoy tuach. Its law is like what?
Boiling food.
They call it boiling food. I think boiling here means boiling hot, not boiling in water. I don't think it means boiling in water necessarily. I don't think it means that.
It's not gonna be right there, right? It's not the trend, that's.
Oh, it's not mavushal. It's not mavushal.
It's kibush is mavushal, but not
Correct.
like-
Sorry.
Kibush is like.
That's right. That's exactly. The Gemara dances between what exactly that means, right? And therefore, the conclusion becomes, based on the Gemara's discussion, because the Gemara actually leaves it open-ended. Gemara concludes the discussion with kasha, right? Kasha, good question, remains unanswered. And so the Gemara there is discussing, as has been the case before, discussing a piece of meat that's been salted together with the gid hanasha, the non-kosher tendon that's in there, right? Similar to the grilling, right, where he said that you can peel off, keep on eating until you get to the tendon, right? Unless it's fatty, in which it transfers all the way through. So similar discussion here in the Gemara, but the Gemara concludes with kasha. It's a question unanswered. But the Gemara, the conclusion based on the Gemara's discussion becomes that the scalding here is to be compared to grilling rather than cooking, considering the Gemara's change in language, which is why boiling would be a proper good translation, because boiling is water, which is cooking. That's cooking. But boiling, I think, is boiling hot, scalding, right? Which is why it's compared more to grilling than it is to actual cooking, and therefore it's less than the kavush, less than the pickling. Yeah. Yeah, but actually even less, because as we're to see, when it comes to, right, there was when two things are touching and they're transferring flavor, we had two different degrees to which you have to peel off the point of contact. Either kadei klipa, which is mamish, just a peel, and the other one was kadei natila. What was it, half a thumb or something? Half a thumb of peeling off. So in the case of salting, it's going to be klipa. It's going to be just the surface, which is even less than grilling, which was kadei natila, which is a significant removal, which we said was 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, whatever it was.
That's if they're actually touching in the salt, or they're in a pot or whatever, in something, in a kli that's salt but not touching.
So good questions. That's going to come. That's going to be.
I missed the last, don't have all the background.
No,
The
that's
last few. See if
that's going to come up. And there's no background. This is it. Meaning this is the first time we're introducing salting. It's going to discuss whether it's touching or not, and how much it's touching. There's a little machlekas around Marshall Chanach, which we'll get to in a second. But yes, that's a good point. Good point. Which we'll get to in a minute. Yeah. Yeah, but this is sorry.
Salty water also.
Okay, so salty water is different. Salty water we discussed already in pickling. In that case, it'll take. That's right. It's kavush. It'll take longer because it takes 24 hours, but it's much more thorough because it's considered like cooking rather than just like tuach, which would be more like grilling. Right. So, good question. Yes, that's what the brine. Not really, because the brine is much. No, sorry. The brine we said was even faster than than regular pickling, right? We said brine was the amount of time it takes for water to boil up, so 18 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. Yeah. So the brine was even faster actually, because it has, I guess, both. It has the heat of salt and the transferring of the liquid, which makes it even more than just plain salting or plain pickling. Okay, so this leniency of treating salting just that you have to peel off the surface layer is on condition that both pieces are lean. They're lean, and therefore there's no liquid to make a transfer happen. The only agent here is a salt, which salt is an extracting agent, but not strong enough to be a absorption agent into the next thing. But now that it's fatty, if it's fatty, then whether, let's say you're talking about actual chalev, actual non-kosher fat, the fat itself is non-kosher, certain parts of the fat non-kosher, then that becomes the liquid by which there is transference, just like grilling, and if you have to have 60 times that fat in the other piece of meat in order for it to remain kosher. Now, I didn't look at the translation here, And I imagine it's going to come up in the yeah, it's probably going to come up in the wait, I'm going the wrong way. It's probably going to come up on this on the margins and the footnotes here. The Shulchan Aruch mentions a middle ground case between two lean versus two or one fatty. And it's not quite clear. And in that case, it's not quite clear what the halakha would be, because the Shulchan Aruch mentions a case in which more than just taking off a peel, you also have to take off that half thumb thickness. And there's a dispute amongst the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch as to what I think that case is. And if I'm seeing correctly on the
there's three
side,
levels.
yes,
Okay.
it's 3 levels there, because the Shulchan Aruch mentions 3 correct. If it's fatty, it transfers like grilling, you have to have 60. If it's lean, it's just kedei netila, it's just the peel. But there's a middle case in which it's kedei klipa, which is the peel. There's a middle case which is kedei netila, the amount of the 2 centimeters or 2 millimeters, whatever it is. And that middle ground case, if I'm looking correctly on the side there, maybe in the summaries of a different one, they're going with the Taz, which says it's a case where it's a little bit fatty, not completely fatty. Okay. The Ramah brings an opinion which is more lenient, even when it's fatty, but in the end, he concludes like the Shulchan Aruch. And even moreover, because the Ramah is of the view that we don't know the difference between fatty and liquid, he treats all lean as fatty, and therefore you always have to have 60 times the ratio in the meat into which it's transferred. But there is an area here where the Ramah is actually lenient. There's a very interesting detail here, which is like this. The Ramah writes, I don't know why they don't put it in this book. It's an important element. It's a little bit surprising that it's not in here. But the question becomes like this, and this is to your phone. You can find it here in a second. No. Now, says the Ramah, because we don't know the difference between fatty and liquid and lean, therefore we treat everything, we need 60 to the ratio. But the 60 ratio you need is from all the pieces in the salting, not each one individually.
Oh, so it's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier, right? In the
Right.
following?
Yeah.
In the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch's view, the Shulchan Aruch is very explicit. He writes, because flavor won't transfer without liquid from one thing to the next, which sounds like a leniency, but you have to have liquid to make it transfer. But it ends up being a stringency here, because each piece of meat will have to have 60 times the ratio to that which it's come in contact with, because there's no liquid to mix it all together. Whereas the Ramah goes lenient. This is the first time we're finding this. But usually the Ramah is more stringent.
Yeah.
Here the Ramah is more lenient because of a principle that's more stringent, and that you don't need, it won't that it could transfer with liquid. I'm sorry, it could transfer without liquid, because we know the difference between fatty and therefore all the things together can be combined to go 60 to the ratio of the non-kosher. But you add the crucial element, which is, and this is besides the fact that the point of contact requires the remove or requires the peel. And the reason for that, but he adds that it has to be 60 times the ratio of the entire piece of meat that became non-kosher, not just 60 times the ratio of the non-kosher element in that meat. This is basically, it has all the entire food item, the entire pot of salted stuff, have to be 60 times the ratio, not just of the non-kosher that's in the meat. One piece of meat absorbed non-kosher.
Right.
So the 60 ratio is not just 60 ratio against the non-kosher absorbed, but 60 ratio against the entire piece of meat. Why is that?
Oh,
Why is that?
well, it's a lot harder.
Well, yes and no. It goes both ways, right? It could be harder, it could be not harder.
Because let's say you have 20 pieces of identical sized meat. It's not 60 times then.
Plus you have your vegetables in there, you have your this, you have your that, everything, right? Now, why does it have to be against the entire piece of meat?
But
Anybody?
it's saying the fat's gonna absorb into the entire piece of meat, make a whole piece of meat tray.
What's the principle? Yes, correct. What's the principle? Remember? Oh, Haticha Nasa Nevela. The piece itself becomes a non-kosher item. So it's not just against the food that's been absorbed in it, but against the entire piece itself. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't, Mechaber himself, the Shulchan Aruch does not make mention of that principle. So it could be, it would seem correct, that according to the Shulchan Aruch, each piece has to have 60 against just the non-kosher. Whereas according to the Ramah, you can get 60 from the entire mixture, but against the full piece of meat, not just against the absorbed stuff in that meat.
So can you pick and
So it's
choose
both
which one
ways.
you want to use to make sure you're thinking about.
I see these, we're learning principles, but in reality, when are you ever,
We're working with tray fat.
when do you ever
Never,
have like
never,
tray fat being
Never.
salted together with
No,
other things like that? It
doesn't happen.
doesn't happen so much, right?
Never gonna happen.
Right, but the principles you're learning are going to become relevant. Right? Okay.
So why? Because the Torah doesn't accept that that entire morsel of meat became the vela.
So it's the limitations of Haticha Nasa Nevela are,
Everybody agrees.
yeah, of course, Haticha Nasa Nevela is a real thing,
Okay,
but
so
when
why-
and how?
So why the Torah? Why the?
So okay, it's a good question. Why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't do that? I have to remember what it said. Like something like this.
Here's a principle everybody agrees on.
Right, but there's also a principle that which the Ramah make mention of too, that wait 1 second. Where did I see this? Oh, it's in the last sif. When it comes to in the last sif, Yadalig, where there it says that if you the salt that you use to salt your meat. So the whole thing is now full of blood, right? And now you put it into a pot. What do you need 60 against? Against the salt
Salt and blood or just the
or
blood,
you're correct
which there would be no way
of determining.
Maybe the
of
salt and
measuring
blood.
that.
Sorry.
No way of measuring that.
Oh, so you need to get the salt in the blood, but the Ramah adds an interesting explanation here. Usually, something which what's the principle of this of 60 ratio? The principle is that you no longer have the flavor, right? Because the issue is you have the flavor of non-kosher. And when it comes to salt, you salt your chicken soup, you put much less than 60%, 60 to 1 to 60.
Yeah.
But it still adds flavor, does it not? That's the whole point. So usually, if something's going to add flavor, even if it's like salt or other spices, where it's going to give flavor at a much less ratio, you don't apply this principle of 60. And yet over here with salty blood, we are. Why? So explains the Ramah, because the non-kosher will not go farther. The absorbed will not go farther than the absorbee. The blood is absorbed in the salt, right? The salt is not kosher. Salt is perfectly kosher. Now the right, because what's not kosher here is the blood, not the salt. Therefore, right, and it's only through the salt that the blood is being transferred. Then once you have 60 to the ratio of the salt, even though the salt itself is giving flavor, but the blood that it absorbs is not going to give flavor because it can't go farther, right? The thing which became non-kosher, that is the absorbee, the salt, will not become more activated or make the thing that it absorbed worse than it was.
He doesn't consider it a Isser Machmas Hatzmai.
Ah, because the blood itself is not Isser Machmas Atzmai. But you still need 60 to the ratio of the salt.
Yeah.
Because the salt absorbed non-kosher. So you need 60 to the ratio of the salt. But the 60 to the ratio of the salt will render the blood no longer activated, even though the salt itself is still active.
So in this case, we're talking about the piece of meat or the blood, which part is not kosher?
The salt, because it's absorbed in blood.
Oh, it's okay.
Then you
Right.
use that salt
And that salt ended up in a pot.
thereafter for something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as long as you have 60 to the ratio of the salt, even though the salt is still giving flavor, but the blood that it absorbed is not going to give that flavor. Right? So
So these are really to learn the principles because this
Right.
ain't happening.
it's not happening, right?
So how does that?
But how does it help here? Because over here, it's like this. The flavor, the non-kosher flavor absorbed in the meat can't go farther just because the meat itself is going farther.
You're not cutting chicken.
Just like this, right?
I see.
The only case where it's not true, as we're going to learn in Basar B'Chalov, which is across the board, is when you have milk and meat mixed together. Where there, the mixture is what makes it aser. And therefore, the whole mixture becomes aser.
Mhm.
Right? That's the case in mamish or where a piece of meat absorbed milk and doesn't have 60 to the ratio. The essence of that prohibition is not the milk. The essence of prohibition is the mixture of the milk and meat.
Mhm.
And that's true of the whole entire piece. So that's when you really have the principle chaticha nasan vela. Right? But nonetheless, the Ramah here does apply chaticha nasan vela. Okay. Okay, the next principle we have is like this. Now, to your point about touching. So the Gemara brings a case of kosher and non-kosher fish, right? Where the kosher fish was salted and the non-kosher fish is unsalted, right? So the kosher fish remains kosher. That's what the Gemara Shulchan Aruch says.
Because fish you don't have to salt, right? You could just eat it.
You could,
You could just eat it. You could just eat the fish, like.
But it was, because this is the Gemara scenario,
What does it
where you
mean?
have non-kosher unsalted and kosher salted.
Just touching.
Oh, so the Gemara. So the question becomes in the commentaries in the Gemara that are shown in why is the salt not causing the kosher fish to become non-kosher? So two explanations, and that gets to the question of touching, and that's going to come. This machlokes, this dispute, comes down to the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah. Option A is that the reason why the non-kosher the kosher remained kosher, even though the non-kosher is being salted here.
No, which is not salted.
Sorry, even though the salt here,
Yeah.
the reason why the kosher remains kosher is because they're not touching, close but not touching.
But if the
Sorry, one
non-kosher-
opinion.
But if non-kosher is not salted, what is it? What's the case? It's in the
Let's say it's in the same pot,
with salt.
but only one is salted, the other one's
But
not.
the kosher would absorb because it has salt on it.
So the kosher one is correct. So the kosher one's been opened because it's not touching. The non-kosher, it's okay, even though they're very close. That's one opinion. The other opinion is, and that would be the opinion of the Ramah, right? That if they're touching, they become non-kosher, even if one is not salted, right? Whereas the other opinion says that when the Gemara said the reason why the fish remains kosher even though it is being salted is because only one is salted, not the other. Which means, therefore, even if they're touching, because only the kosher is salted and the non-kosher not salted, they would still, the kosher fish would remain kosher, even though they're touching and it's being salted. But because only the kosher is being salted.
You mentioned before that.
So this puts a limitation on the transference
You
of
said even
salting.
before, you just mentioned even if the fish is not salted. You're saying even if the kosher fish is not salted.
So the kosher fish is salted,
I know,
non-kosher fish is
I
not salted.
understand.
Now, this Gemara says that the kosher fish remains kosher.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a contradiction past the
yeah.
thing to the other principle that the salting does transfer. How do you resolve the contradiction? Option A is because they're not touching,
Yeah.
which means, therefore, if they are touching, even if only one is salted, there's still transfer, according to this opinion.
Okay.
Option B to resolve the Gemara is that even if they are touching, the reason why the transfer doesn't happen is because only one is salted.
Fish is normally lean. We assume fish would be.
We assume fish is lean.
Yeah,
That's
like we
correct.
assume the meat. You always have that million question. Is it really?
Yeah, okay, so it's
So colloquially,
discussing the food gut enough.
fish that we call fatty colloquially, does that lehalacha? Like, does that exist? Or
I don't think so.
all fish is lean.
As far as the halakha is concerned, I'm pretty sure fish is lean. Right?
But
We
there
looked at it before.
are fish that
They
are.
didn't have tuna. They didn't have patty tuna.
No, there are fish that are.
They might
considered
have
fatty.
had it.
Fatty tuna is like considered like clean.
Look, fish oil was a thing, so I don't know.
Right.
Fish oil was a thing for a
Still
very long
is,
time.
yeah.
No, I'm saying, but it's not a recent thing. It's
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fish oil is-
Sorry?
Yeah, you're right. The whole depends.
Okay, let's discuss in the commentaries there. Yeah. Okay, so that was the next thing, which therefore becomes it changes the halacha. Does if only one is salted, does it transfer flavor? Dispute. One opinion says if it's touching, yes. Other opinion says no, never. Because only one is salted. Okay, that's going to be in Sif Yud. Yud Aleph is going to be again the same question of going back to the question of like similar to the grilling. Do we apply the principle that the lower one overpowers the higher one? Do we apply that principle to salting just like we did to grilling? And
So if salting is it's gonna go, it's gonna go down, right? The meat, what heat normally transfers up, and in this case, it's gonna be like, looks like a bit more the opposite.
so the Ramaz, that's the Ramaz view. The Ramaz view when it comes to salting, which thing is a little higher or lower.
Because liquid's gonna go right there.
Right, so Ramaz says when it comes to salting, up and down is no difference.
Okay.
It's only by heat, to your point. But the Shulchan Aruch still says if the lower one is kosher and unsalted, and the top one is not kosher, salted, then it will only transfer down, peeling. That's it. Only appeal because he still applies the opinion of
This is all cold, right? We're talking about here. It's all we're talking about.
cold. Yes, cold. But the salting itself is the ratuach. The salting is the scalding, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you treat a mamash like scolding, then it goes upward also. That's the Shulchan Aruch's view. But the Ramah, as you note, makes no difference. Upper bottom salting makes a difference.
Because if it's cold, in theory, right? If it's cold, you could potentially maybe reverse the read. There's a way. I mean, you could potentially, if it's cold, like at least from a chemical reaction, you could potentially reverse. I'm saying that you could potentially pull,
If explain.
You could probably put like a chemical in that would like somehow. I mean, I don't know how luckily if it would allow that, but you could probably try to like remove the ester. You know what I'm saying? It probably like, even if it gets in there, since it's cold, it's probably a way
To extract flavor from something else?
Yeah, it probably. I mean, in theory, you probably could do something you could probably do something like that.
Like chemically?
Chemically, you could probably do something like that. You could probably like isolate it.
I don't know, I wonder. Look, that principle exists in halacha. Where does it exist in halacha? It's actually patently obvious. Where did that principle exist in halacha? We're extracting non-kosher. Salting meat.
Yeah.
You're chemically extracting a flavor from one thing from the other, right? That's the point. So it exists. I wonder if you can apply that to other things. I don't know. But that's an interesting thought experiment. Okay, Yud Beis is going to be the fact that there is no salting when it comes to kalim, when it comes to vessels. So
Meaning salting is not like boiling when it's
not like exactly, it's only with respect to food itself, not like boiling when it comes to right. It's correct. If you were scalding a piece of meat on a griddle, it's going to be absorb the flavor, not with respect to salting. And as the Shulchan Aruch is going to point out, that they I guess somehow they salted cheese and shaped them in different molds. And if the mold was a non-kosher mold, the cheese is completely fine because it never got heated, even though this cheese was salted. Right?
So
Even though you shouldn't do that in the first
it's
instance.
salted and not kosher piece is in a pot. The pot's okay. So
Correct. Got to rinse it out. That's it. Even though you shouldn't do it in the first place, but it's
of
fine.
course.
But what he does say in the first case is actually what you could do is, all right. But what you could do, and this comes in 13 Sifid Gimel, is that you can have a fleshig dish, a meat dish in which you have salt, and you take that salt and sprinkle it on your lasagna, on your cheese lasagna, no problem whatsoever, because the salt is not going to extract flavor from the dish that it's in, even if this is a meat dish, and that is not even b'diavad, that's l'chatchila.
Even if both would be hot, that would still be the
So
case.
basically,
The food item would be hot, not the dish.
No, not the food item. Like your example with the salt, and the dish is hot,
If the dish is hot,
and you put the salt in the dish.
And
And
then
the
you're-
dish is
then
not
you're
kosher,
taking the
right? The
salt-
dish is not kosher. And are you taking the salt?
why is it
out?
just not kosher? Okay, it's a non-kosher dish, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it's
the
hot.
same case you said, and it's hot. You said you could take the salt out. Did you assume the dish was cold?
If it's a clear mission, you're gonna definitely be.
I have to
But
think about that. I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure.
There's no liquid.
I'm
There's no,
assuming,
there's no liquid. I'm actually not
There's no
sure.
liquid.
I'm assuming this
No.
mocha is cold.
Correct? If it's, and maybe even if it's hot.
Yeah, do we?
If you look at
Well, if it's cold, there's no chiddush. I mean, there's no, if it's cold, then.
If it's cold,
There's
even if it's
nothing-
wet, you can do it.
If it's cold and it's
Yeah.
wet, you could.
The Shach says that. If it's cold, even if it's wet, you can do it.
I
Because
see.
it does salt and extract flavor.
So it's for sure if it's hot and there's no water, then you're.
That's my assumption. It's a good question, actually. We have to look at that. We have to put a pin in that.
Basically,
Let's
by
think.
this logic, you can use a meat salt shaker. Let's say you have a dairy and a meat salt shaker. You can use a meat salt shaker technically for your
Okay, when it comes to the meat salt shaker, you have to be a little bit more careful
Is
because
that
there's
steam?
steam.
When you
Yeah.
cook, yeah.
And that's
The
right.
steam would be
And
going.
that's a that's a hot liquid in your keli. But nonetheless, the salt,
Steam is a hot liquid.
right? But the salt, actually, when it comes to salt, maybe you're right, because the salt won't extract the flavor when it
That's what
comes.
you're saying. Salt
What's going
will
on?
extract flavor. So
Unless,
I'm
but
talking about salt-
unless
I'm talking
there's,
about salt-
unless you have hot liquid, then now it's mavushal mamish.
But steam is hot liquid.
Steam is hot liquid, so that's your problem when it comes to the salt shakers. So it's a little bit different, but it's a good question. If you have a hot fleishik dish, can you take the salt from there and put it onto that liquid? Let's say it's dry,
Not kosher. Not
Okay,
kosher,
dry.
kosher.
hot, non-kosher dish,
Right.
filled with salt. Can you take it and sprinkle it on kosher food?
Right.
Good question. My gut is going to say the answer is yes. I don't see any way in which the flavor is extracted here.
But the salt shakers could be an issue.
The salt chicken, because now you have wet liquid, and now it's a mavushal situation. Now it's a visual situation. What was it, Sifti Gimel? Look, okay, we'll have to look in the commentaries in Sifti Gimel. Actually, you know what? The book that I have, the other book that I use for the
Yeah.
second year, we'll probably have it. So we're gonna have to keep remember and see if we can find that. Okay. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it. Yudalit, I think I mentioned earlier. That's the question. That's the question of the Yud Gimel was that there's no salting when it comes to dishes. That was Yud Gimel, and Yudalid is the question of the blood that's absorbed in salt. You need 60 is the ratio of the salt. Even though the salt is still active, it's not going to make the blood more active than it would have been otherwise. That is Yud Dalid.
If you have it in that case, if you would
Which case?
If you with the salt, right? The salt in the meat, right? So the salt absorbs the. Can you still roast it? Like for example, if you have a piece of meat, right? You don't have to salt it. You can always roast it, and then you don't have to salt it, right? If you roast the meat, is that?
You're talking about doing tzli and
Yeah.
any malicha kedei tzliya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically. So if once it's absorbed, like I guess with the salting, right? Then I guess you can't roasting will not like the salt stays in there, like it's like you've lost that ability once you like once the salt like absorbs the blood, that's it. Is that like that's it? Like the salt has absorbed the non-kosher and like it's when it's in the piece, or is it?
You're saying if you grill it with the salt still on it.
Yeah, will that like burn it off, or is it like we would kind of like that's kind of the trade-off once?
I don't know. It's a good question. I guess that'll come up probably in malicha. You're saying actually you have a problem there because when it comes to malicha, okay, we'll have to get there because it comes to malicha, besides for the salting, you also have to do hadacha.
Yeah.
Right. In this case, you didn't do hadacha. You skipped hadacha and went to tzliya. So I don't know if that's how that works. We'll have to see when we get there, Mr. Hashem. That's a good question. Okay, any other questions you want to address? Anything not clear? Yeah. Okay, so that's this week's quota.
Yeah, I actually
What-
want to
yeah.
review. So the what's the case for the Shulchan Aruch to say that like more stringently, like the fat doesn't get like what's the different cases?
So it's one case where you have, let's say,
Yeah.
a pot of a bunch of salted pieces,
Okay.
right?
You have
And
a bunch of salted pieces.
a bunch of pieces salting in some container,
in the container.
yeah?
Okay.
And one of those salted pieces is not kosher,
Okay.
right? So now, let's say it touched a bunch of pieces in there.
Okay.
Right. How much 60-0 ratio do you need?
Much 60-0.
Or 60-1?
60-1.
So the Shulchan Aruch is of the view, each individual piece that this thing touched requires, if it's fatty, so there's liquid transfer, each individual piece requires 60. So the ratio of the non-kosher that meat has in it.
So like you touched it, like you touched this meat. And
Yeah.
You need 60 to this meat for this piece to be cooked.
60 to the non-kosher
Each
absorbed in
morsel,
that meat.
each piece of meat.
Each piece of meat that was touched
Okay. each
requires
piece-
60
you could have-
now
to the
this-
ratio of the non-kosher that the thing had.
Let's say you have in
Even
the
if
pot
you
60
even if
pieces.
you take a lean
60
meat and you
pieces of-
salt it, water will be extracted.
Okay, so that's why the Rambam says we don't know the difference between salt,
Okay.
liquid, and that's what. See, fat. What's fat? Lean doesn't mean zero liquid. If it has zero liquid, for example, chametz on Pesach,
Uh-huh.
that's going to come up where even the Ramah will say, I'm not applying this whole 60 to the rate one because there's no liquid whatsoever.
Right.
But lean doesn't mean no liquid. It means
It has to
under
be-
the level of fat, which is why Ramah says, I don't know where that line is. I'm going to treat them all like it's
I'm
fatty.
taking like a lean
But if it's
brisket and I'm
completely dry-
salted and there's a lot of water.
Of course, that's why the Ramah says we don't know the difference between lean and fat, because lean does not mean zero liquid.
Right,
If it's mamish zero liquid, then it's like chametz on Pesach.
right.
You're going to see that Ramah says in that case for sure. Yeah, but what I want to answer your question, is that clear?
Yeah, no, I would really restart.
Okay, so you have, let's say, a piece of meat
Piece of
that absorbed non-kosher
fats.
food, whatever, absorbed non-kosher from somewhere else.
Okay,
Yeah. Now that piece of meat fell into your tub that's salting a bunch of other kosher meats. Yeah. And now it touched 5 of them. Each of those individual 5 pieces of meat requires 60 to the ratio of however much non-kosher that original piece of meat absorbed.
because it touched each one individually.
If it's fatty, this means fatty.
That's not chaticha. It's not chaticha.
Not chaticha nasavela. But Ramah conversely says, if all of the pieces in the entire mixture of your salt, not just the meat, but your vegetables, whatever else is in that mixture of salted stuff, if there's 60 to the ratio of the totality of the original piece of meat that fell in, now you're okay.
Even though it didn't touch that nut.
Even though it didn't touch that one.
Yeah.
And the one that it touched, you have to just peel off.
So it reminds me like the same as if you have like, let's
He's
say,
treating it like a pot, mamish. He's treating it like
liquid.
he's treating it like bishul in that regard.
So, but the piece of meat became an avela, right?
And the Ramah's view in this case, yes.
There are most.
Which is why the entire thing has to have 60 against the entire piece of meat.
So, but in the Shulchan Aruch's view, it didn't become an avela.
In the Shulchan Aruch's view, flavor doesn't transfer without liquid. And because there's no flavor, there's no liquid. So transfer is not going all around.
Yeah.
It transfers only by touch. And if I'm only going to treat it to the degree of how much was touched. And in this case, it was only touched to whatever percentage of non-kosher fat was in that original piece of meat. And that's it.
It's fatty, so it transfers into.
So it transfers into what it touched, but nothing more. Because there's no liquid between piece A, between the 5 pieces. There's only salt between the 5 pieces.
Okay.
But there is liquid in the point of contact because it's fatty, but not liquid to the other pieces. And therefore you can't combine all of them to the 60 ratio.
So 60 only to the fat, but not to the piece.
According to the Mechaber, yes. That's what it
Mm,
seems.
whatever.
That's what it seemed to me. But keep your eyes open for that because that's how I understood it. If I got it wrong, you'll have to let me know. But that's how I understood it when I read it.
But just so I'm clear, I missed.
Yeah.
The Seder is, you give us the summary like this, we go off now. And
Learn it inside.
And Wednesday is what?
Wednesday, I read it inside, translate, and give practical applications. for all
So
the
Wednesday,
details.
we're going through.
I'm gonna read through it
word by
quickly.
word, Shach and Taz, and-
Not Shach and Taz, word by word, Mechaber Ramah,
Okay,
and I'm going to interject with like practical halachas that come along the way
okay.
from the stuff.
Okay, so Wednesday is crucial. It's not like.
So
yeah,
right,
yeah.
so actually, like Wednesday's crucial, like practical halacha. This is like the principles.
Introduction.
So the principles and then
This
the
is like,
application.
you do
Yeah,
this,
but
so
when-
you could help yourself learn the actual
We
stuff.
do the principles and then
Yeah.
the practical application will come on Wednesday.
But we're gonna go through.
Yes, that
the
should be
whole
up, yeah.
thing.
As we 8 p.m. on Wednesday, it's gonna be the same.
Yeah, same. I'm gonna post the
Unless-
poll, but
Unless, I was gonna say you should take a pull out.
are people going to the wedding this week?
No, I'm talking about if it's called, if just Wednesday or Thursday, which is better for people.
Some people prefer Thursday.
uh,
Okay, I'm gonna put out Wednesday for this week, and if it comes back slow, then the next week I'll put a poll, which was better Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday.
What wedding?
There is, by the way, there is Kol night. Kol is open now on Wednesday nights, and I think another night also, right? But certainly on Wednesday nights. So there's gonna be people learning here. We'll be in here, but there's gonna be people learning, so it's to go like a learning environment. Okay, Eden. It was a wonderful week. It's wonderful to get back into it.
Right.
Once your brain gets back into it, it starts to turn the wheels, and we enjoy it more and more.
Can I get a copy of the?
Yeah, I'll give you yes, yeah,
But you have the summary booklet too,
yeah. I have everything.
Oh.
Tell me what you're missing, and I'll bring.